Good evening and welcome to the Township of Chatham Township Committee meeting for Thursday, August 26, 2018. Has adequate notice been given, Greg?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given about the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on January 5th, 2018. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the municipal building on January 5th, 2018. And notice was filed with the Township Clerk on January 5th, 2018.
Would you please stand for the flag salute? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Selin?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Swartz?
Here.
Mayor Ritter?
Here. Moving on, do I have a motion to approve the agenda? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to reports. Typhoon, you want to lead us off?
Mr. Mayor, I have no reports.
Thank you much. Mike?
I'll take Typhoon's time. The DPW has had a very busy couple of weeks. As everybody knows, driving around town, the debris piles were huge and have been shrinking dramatically. The cleanup is really finished on town roads, is finished as of today. And as of the end of today and starting tomorrow, our local DPW is starting to pick up along the county roads. That was kind of a surprise because early on we had expected the county to take care of the county roads, and it wasn't until this week that they announced that they'd be happy to take care of it, but not for a couple months. So our DPW is taking care of it, and everybody will be picked up. There continues to be an update on the status of the debris pickup on our website, if anybody's interested in looking. And just a little bit of the mechanics. There are three teams of work crews out there. One is contractors using their roll-on, roll-off dumpsters and their lifting equipment. It's more of a digger. And then two DPW crews with DPW trucks following along behind a front-end loader. So they've been really doing great work, and they're to be congratulated. May 1st, also sticking with the DPW, May 1st is the start of our paving season. So people just be aware that as of May 1st, contractors will be milling the first of the roads, and then really by the end of the week they'll be paving those roads. And the specific roads are Bridge Avenue and Central Avenue, which run from River Road down to the bridges over the Passaic River, Henry Drive off of River Road, Gibbons Place off of Shunpike, Memorial Way, which is over in the center of Green Village, and then the parking lot of the Green Village Firehouse. Again, all those will be milled on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then paved on Thursday, Friday. Segueing to the Open Space Committee, people probably have noticed that the three houses on the property that the township purchased at the corner of Southern Boulevard and River Road have not yet been demolished, but they're on the schedule to be done. We're kind of pushing the contractor who has been awarded the contract to do that. There had been a little bit of synchronizing that needed to be done to disconnect the JCP&L power lines to the buildings. So they wanted some assurances that that had been done, and it has held it up longer than expected, but John is going to be leaning on them and trying to get that done promptly. And that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mike. Kevin?
No reports tonight.
Great. Karen?
Thank you, Your Honor. There are a couple of great charities, a couple of great community organizations that are having some fundraisers coming up. And first of all, Saturday, we have to make sure we get rid of all of our shreddables by attending the Senior Center fundraiser shred event held at the Chatham train station parking lot on the south side. They suggest $5 for grocery size bag, $10 per box. And this is a great way of getting rid of all those credit card applications that keep coming in the mail, refinance your mortgage, all the things that you suspect may impact your financial profile or identity if it were to fall into the wrong hands. over the course of the last 6 months in my house, we've just been throwing them into a big bag, and we'll take them down to the senior center shred event. It's a great fundraiser. They're also starting to sell their tickets for the Glorious Garden Tour. It is a real gem in the crown of our senior center fundraising efforts. Our Board of Trustees, spearheaded by Board President Jim Connolly, has really put together a great series of events. We have a cocktail party kicking off on Friday night, June 1st, and Saturday, June 2nd will be the Glorious Garden Tour. Please visit the website or even click through to them on Facebook, where you'll be able to not only buy your tickets, but also to just make a omnibus kind of donation if you so like. And here's something new. As of late, our Chatham Volunteer Fire Department the Chatham Township Volunteer Fire Department has put together a ladies' night over the last couple of years. And a lot of great vendors and cottage industries and independent entrepreneurs around town are coming together on Friday, May 11th. And it's a really great way of gathering together with the community, doing a little shopping, have a little wine. It's ladies' night. I don't know whether they'd throw the gentlemen out if the gentlemen wanted to crash the party. But please see the Chatham Township Volunteer Fire Department website. Friday, May 11th at 7 p.m. It will be at the River Road Firehouse. And 50-50 raffle and prizes. And it's really taking off. It's a great source of getting together and a great fundraiser. Other things going on around town when we talk about deferring our time, I see our Environmental Commission leader, Dot Stillinger, who'll be giving her report later. She can talk about a couple of the great things that the Chatham Township Environmental Commission has sort of been working on. They've been working on cleaning up the Passaic River and planting some seedlings and doing some other great things. So Dot, I know you'll be able to share that with us. That's what I got.
Great, thank you much. Just three quick things from my report. The first is this past Wednesday, I guess it was, joined mayors of Morris County to meet with Governor Murphy, discussed a number of issues facing Chatham Township and other municipalities in Morris County, among them taxes, the displeasure with New Jersey Transit, and the effort that the governor has taken to try to improve Jersey Transit's activity and servicing its customers here in Jersey, obviously. We talked in depth about the power outage and how the utilities need to be held accountable for the outages and the fact that the response time was anything but good this past two storms that we had. And then he also talked about education, specifically the increased funding that the legislature has passed for many municipalities. So it was a good conversation, as I said, with about 20 other mayors from Morris County. A good opportunity to meet with the governor and others and share ideas and such. So he indicated that they're going to be doing this in the future as well. So I look forward to doing this again with the governor and others. Another meeting we held was about 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, with the Board of Education, myself, Deputy Mayor Schwartz, Tom Chiccarone, representatives from the borough municipality as well. Met with, as I said, Board of Education leaders to talk about Class 3 officers and specifically how are they going to be funded. We had indicated to them at the time that our budget actually had been passed. And in terms of having Class 3 officers in the school, we brought up a couple of issues. First and foremost is whether or not residents in the town would want armed police officers in the schools themselves. And the second, again, was talking about the funding issue and how they would be funded for these officers. For those of you who may or may not know, many of the schools have, I guess they call safety resource officers, SROs, I believe it is. Right? They're the gentlemen who wear the red shirts in the schools themselves. My understanding is the cost to fund those individuals is equivalent to what it costs to fund a Class 3 officer. So while much more analysis needs to be done, I think, on the Board of Ed's part in terms of determining how best to fund the need for these, or if there's a need from the residents for these officers in the schools. One of the suggestions I had at least, was, swapping out one for one, and therefore you really won't have to increase the funding per se. And it would solve the problem in terms of having individuals armed in the school itself. The other item we want to bring to everyone's attention, I don't know if Sergeant Meade was going to talk about this later, but I'll preempt it in case. We've learned that the Morris County is changing their alert system, their community and emergency alert system, from Everbridge, which is currently what we use, to a system called RAVE, I believe is what it's called. This is going to be taking place in May. We're trying to give residents a heads up, as it were, It should be quote-unquote seamless in terms of registering for this new service. But the fact of the matter is, while they are going to transition all of the data we have from one system to the other, my understanding from Lieutenant Miller is that all residents will have to re-register for this alert. Check your emails, your address, how you want to receive the alerts, what alerts you want to sign up for. This is not just something exclusive to Chatham Township. It's all Morris County municipalities are going to be going through this. So we just want to give everyone a heads up. We're going to be communicating this again at future meetings on social media, through Act Now alerts and elsewhere. But just everyone know that apparently the change is afoot, and we're told it should be a better system in terms of communicating with residents. So that's all I have. John?
Committeeman Kelly did an excellent job summarizing the roads, so nothing to report, Mayor.
Thank you much. Pat? Nothing? You're good? Okay. Rich? Perfect. Tom?
You guys do that every week now. Just two very quick things. One that's on the agenda, the resolution 2018-093 is related to the debris cleanup. You'll recall, and Mayor, you mentioned that we're using outside contractors to supplement the DPW crews in the cleanup. The contracts that were awarded were for a 2-week period, 10 days on one and 20 days on the other, with a not to exceed amount. Well, we've reached those amounts, so this resolution that I'm proposing and requesting that you approve would extend both of those contracts for 1 more week so that we can hopefully finish the cleanup by next Friday. So that's what that resolution's about.
Tom, do we expect that the total cost of the cleanup will still be within the amount that we approved? Or?
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, otherwise we couldn't do it.
Great.
And then the only other thing is a piece of news that the playground that had been taken down at Esternay Field to make way for the temporary cell tower, the cell tower is finally gone. They've relocated onto the PSE&G tower. The playground equipment has been on site for some time. It has now been marked out. They've surveyed the site and staked out the corners. I need to go out and verify that they're putting it in the correct place, and then it'll go up. So hopefully that'll be installed this coming week.
Great, just in time. All right, moving on to annual reports. We welcome Dot Stillinger, Chairperson of the Environmental Commission, who will give us their annual report.
Hi, everybody.
How you doing?
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to brag a little bit. A couple of typos were fixed, so I have a new
Thank you.
version here for you. Is that everybody?
Yep. You got one?
Thank you. Do you want one? Yep, hold on. Dot, would you mind turning the microphone down just so that you can speak into it?
Like that?
Or stand on the box?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
great, that is great.
The Chatham Township Environmental Commission consists of 9 volunteers who spend a lot of their time doing good and wonderful environmental things for the planet. The annual report will find its way onto the website if anybody has any burning interest in reading it. The Environmental Commission is also the Green Team, which is working for bronze certification, which we hope to have completed by the end of June, which is when we have to do it. We do lots of other things. We keep an eye on development applications. Sometimes we have a resident coming in to ask about things. We do a lot of projects, work days, and we keep track of the recycling. Events, we do events. Living with wildlife. We do a certain amount of limited advocacy at the state level, keeping an eye on the Pilgrim Pipeline and offshore drilling. We train ourselves. We go to events hosted by the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, which provide excellent opportunities to learn a little bit about how you can be effective as an environmental commissioner, and other good things. Our plans for the future for next year are to do more of the same: cleanups, events, other projects. Anybody who suggests a project is welcome to come to a meeting and talk to us about it, but you need to be a little careful, because the next thing you know, you will find yourself on the Township Committee, which is what happened to Mike. But the main thing I want to mention tonight is to thank all the people who really help what we do so much. The Chatham Township Committee, whenever we ask them for anything, we need a resolution, we need an ordinance passed, anything, they say, oh yeah, okay, we can do that, and they do it. They're just great. I want to specifically thank Chatham Disposal Company for doing free pickups of the trash that we collect on our work days. Once in a while, we even do an extra one during the year, and they come immediately, within a day or two, and pick up all our trash free. And they've been doing this for 16 years. So Chatham Disposal really deserves a big hand. ShopRite of Chatham has done the same thing. Every year, for as long as we've had this event, they have contributed bags, gloves, supplies for our event. And last year, the Chatham Township DPW was extremely supportive when we were working on the Hillside Trail on Hillside Avenue. I also want to thank the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, because whenever we reach out to them when we need information or assistance of some kind, they're always there for us. And most particularly, I want to thank the environmental commissioners who show up at meetings, volunteer to do work, spend a lot of time, not just in meetings, but getting out and dirty. And this is where I mention a little commercial for the seedling giveaway that's going to happen this Saturday. Drop by the compost area on Tanglewood Lane and pick up your 5 tree seedlings. They're free. This is part of the New Jersey state program, but they're free. The price is right.
We're in the recycling area.
Recycling area,
We had to move over
not
to
the compost.
recycling area because of all the stuff in the compost area.
And you know why there's so much stuff in the compost area. So, are there any questions?
I don't have any questions, Dot, but I do want to commend your continuous zeal year in and year out, and your recruiting of our eager volunteers. As you said, you got to be careful, because when you show up, you get a job
You do.
to do on the Environmental Commission.
I must mention Kara Fieser's name. She's the vice chair of the Environmental Commission. She initiated the seedling giveaway project and has spent countless hours organizing it and getting it, pulling it all together. She's had some wonderful helpers, but Kara has just gone way beyond anything that we would have expected to make this happen. So do come by Saturday and support Kara.
The Passaic River cleanup involved an awful lot of residents just coming out. It's something that everybody cares about. It's a natural resource that we've enjoyed in Chatham Township for a couple of million years now.
About that.
And I think everybody has a vested interest in knowing when they drive by, they see as pristine a resource as they can. We see it at the Green Pond Cleanup Day that you do.
We work on trails too.
And really, it is something that unifies the community. I really do believe that. It's something that, you know, we talk about party lines and political philosophies. It goes well beyond that, and it's a great unifying force. And so to you, to your colleagues on the Environmental Commission, it's a great job. Kara's also working on
Something else really
yeah,
important.
chemical-free lawn treatments and so on. So it's a great group.
Truly important
Thanks for
project.
everything, Dot, really.
Yes, thank you, Dot.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, just a couple of questions, Dot, and I think I ask you this every year, so I'll ask it again. Um, uh, Certainly the things that are impacting not only the state but our town, you obviously pay close attention to the issues that affect us the most from an environmental concern. We've been very proactive in trying to address some issues here, particularly when Pilgrim Pipeline popped up, and other issues involving in the Great Swamp. And of course, Dot has been on the Great Swamp Watershed Association board for many years, and applaud your work there, and along with the Passaic River. But what do you see, you know, obviously we've talked about overdevelopment, Pilgrim Pipeline. Are there other issues? We're faced, obviously, with affordable housing and the impact that, you know, how that allows builders to come in and potentially overdevelop a town in the face of that, in the name of that. What do you see as other threats that may face the community and the state as a whole?
Beside the ones you've mentioned?
Yes. Yeah.
I think you've put your finger on the most serious ones. Development, overdevelopment is changing the character of Chatham Township. And I think the tree ordinance that's going to be hopefully passed tonight is a really good step in the direction of maintaining the character of the town. It's a wonderful ordinance. The way the laws stand now, there isn't very much a municipality can do. You're governed by the municipal land use law. There are things that you're bound by law that you have to stick to. But I think the things you can do, you are addressing as best you can. Another wonderful ordinance was the pipeline ordinance. And it's funny, I think Phil Murphy took a leaf out of John Rushke's book because he did the same thing about the offshore drilling. He passed a state law that prohibits pipelines and infrastructure from going through the 3-mile limit that is under the jurisdiction of New Jersey. So I'm sure you talked to the governor about that. That worked well. That worked well. I was impressed. As far as affordable housing goes, the environmental community has been concerned about affordable housing forever, because depending on how things go, the environmental regulations that, for instance, preserve and protect wetlands could pass exceptions to those in order to fulfill affordable housing. So it's a war of priorities, and it's not clear how that's going to play out. Now, right now, with Governor Murphy, the DEP is holding the line, but it's something that we really have to keep an eye on.
It's a fine balance, yeah.
Yeah.
My second part of the question is, and again, I'm curious to hear your comments. You do a lot of work with young people in the schools, and the organizations do. How do we translate the idea of that first line of defense, if you will, the individual responsibility to teach to young people this idea of, you know, throwing a water bottle on the ground? You know, I talk to coaches about, you know, the very first thing, very last thing you do before you have a team meeting, before you send everybody home, bring the team in, look around, pick up everything around you. Okay, now we have our team meeting, now you can leave with it. You know, but everybody's crunched for time. Sometimes that message doesn't get communicated. But how do we instill in young people this very notion of individual responsibility, taking care of what's immediately around you? This idea of that, oh, well, you know, someone else will pick that up for me, or someone else will do that, or we pay someone to clean up the fields. That's their job. How do we translate that message? I mean, if you have an answer, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I have a couple of answers. First of all, I don't think it's the young people that are lacking the responsibility and not picking things up. They are teaching the adults. The adults are the ones that are walking by the trash or thinking, well, I don't have to do this, it doesn't matter. The kids are nagging the adults to be more responsible. And the second part of the question is the picture that appeared in the Chatham Courier today, Christina Mott, an environmental commissioner, brings her son, David, to all these environmental events. And that is the most wonderful way. Sometimes kids would rather be home watching video games, but that's part of being a parent, you know. You have to kind of put your foot down. Take your kids to meetings. Take your kids to events. Just drag them there. Believe it or not, they are absorbing, you do it. You bring your kids everywhere. And they absorb more than you think they're absorbing. Just look past all the yelling and screaming and complaining and do it anyway. That is really so important. And the schools are doing a great job. The environmental education, the activities in the schools are really, all the adults should be required to take one of those environmental courses.
Well, stewardship is part of the human condition, right, Dot?
Oh, well.
It spans generations, it spans
It
ideologies.
really does, yeah.
Stewardship should be part of all of us.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Dot.
Any other questions for Dot? Well, thank you again, Dot, for all your service. We'll now open up for a hearing of citizens. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard on issues which are not topics scheduled for a public hearing tonight. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes.
Hi there. My name is Jamie McLaughlin. I've lived in Chatham for 19 years, 16 in the borough and 3 presently in the township, and hopefully for many years more. I'm also, sorry? Your address? 244 River Edge Drive. I'm also a member of Moms Demand Action, and I would like to introduce you to the co-leaders of the Morristown chapter. They are here tonight to speak with you with an appeal, and then after that I'll have a personal statement. Thank you. Teresa Plero and Fern Walker.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Teresa Piliero, and this is Fern Wilkin. Is Mr. LeConte here? I just want to say thank you for speaking with me yesterday and getting back to me.
You never sent me the stuff you said you were going to send.
Oh, I did. You never got it?
Never arrived.
Oh, I apologize. I sent it. I'm so sorry. I'll resend it to you. I did send it at about 12:58 a.m. because I got home late because I thought these people are going to think I'm out of this world. Well, I apologize. I was in Connecticut all day, so I didn't think to call you. I'm sorry. We are Moms Demand Action, and we make up the Morris County group. We are a nonpartisan grassroots organization that supports the Second Amendment, and we believe in common gun sense solutions that can help decrease the epidemic of gun violence that kills too many of our children and loved ones every day. We have chapters now in all 50 states and over 4.5 million supporters. So what we're here today too is for 2 asks.
Before you get too far, can you state your name again and your address?
Sure. So Teresa Piliero, P as in Peter, I-L-I-E-R-O, and I live at 23 Pippins Way in Morris Township. You want Fern's name?
I'm not going to speak,
no,
so
proceed.
it's okay.
Okay. So we have 2 asks today. So Wear Orange Day is coming up on June 2nd. And I'll just give you a little brief history about that. We're asking for a proclamation to declare June 2nd as Gun Violence Awareness Day. The history of Gun Violence Awareness Day is the color orange has a long and proud history in the gun safety movement. Orange is the color that Hadia Pendleton's friends wore in honor of her after she was shot and killed in Chicago at the age of 15. I don't know how many of you have heard of Hadia Pendleton, but she was shot in a park after she had finished taking exams just 1 week after performing at President Obama's second inaugural parade in 2013. And her friends decided they wanted to honor her life by wearing the color orange, and decided to do so on the day of her birth, which is June 2nd. So since the first National Gun Violence Awareness Day in 2015, hundreds of communities and organizations continue to commemorate the event by wearing orange, holding community events, lighting skylines, orange, and issuing city and state proclamations. Federal, state, and local elected leaders and brand partners have joined hundreds of thousands of Americans nationwide to wear orange and call for an end to gun violence. And there is a website that you can go to look for more information, and I'll be certain to follow up with you, Mr. LeConte, to make sure you did get that, email. And again, I apologize. I absolutely will when I sit down. I'm very disappointed that it didn't get to you. So basically, it's a proclamation that, in essence, asks you to make the commitment to sign and allow to happen, to commit to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all that you can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. So that's our first ask. Do you have any questions about Wear Orange, or should I just wait to the end to ask you?
It's Wear Orange Day, or is it Gun Violence Awareness?
So it's Wear Orange is the hashtag and the common name, but it's the National Gun Violence Awareness Day. The proclamation is to declare June 2nd as the National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And Wear Orange is the acronym by which everyone brings, increases, and elevates the topic of conversation around gun violence. So the second thing we would ask you to commit to is, have you heard about Mayors Against Illegal Guns?
No.
Okay. So you as a mayor, and many mayors, get late night calls when a cop is shot or a child is killed, and you know the toll that gun violence takes on our communities. In 2006, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg and former Boston Mayor Thomas Menino founded Mayors Against Illegal Guns as a coalition of 15 mayors. Since then, they've built a very large bipartisan group of more than 1,000 current and former mayors from nearly every state to fight for common gun sense laws. So together, mayors have been the leaders in promoting and advocating for common gun sense laws that reduce gun violence and save lives. And so we would ask you to, again, that will be in the email, and I apologize. It's a statement of principles, and it's basically for you, Mayor Ritter, to read and decide whether you want to join this coalition so that you can do everything you can to reduce gun violence, senseless gun violence, and keep your community safer.
Great. You can send it to me as well.
Absolutely. Sure, I'll find your email address. I know I have yours, and I'm going to resend it to you, and I will find yours and send it to you.
It's on the website, but it's Critter, C-R-I-T-T-E-R, at
Chatham
chathamtownship-nj.gov.
Okay. Yes, because I saw nj.gov and then I saw .org. Were you .org? Because I sent
Yes,
you
I'm
to
.org.
I did send it to .org.
G. LeConte at chathamtownship.org, and if you want to send it to the both of us.
They both work.
Sure. Are there any questions for me?
Now I look forward to receiving your material.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
for hearing us.
Yes, indeed.
It's me again. This is just a personal statement in support of this request. I stand here as a citizen, a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, and a gun violence survivor. My brother was shot to death in 1992. And even though personally devastated by gun violence, it was the massacre at Sandy Hook that propelled me into advocacy for common sense gun reform. Moms Demand Action has been a steady source of support for me and my family. At their request, I became one of their faces of courage. You can read my story on their website and the stories of countless other American citizens that have been devastated by gun violence in our country. Approximately 96 Americans die every day from this violent epidemic. So the list of personal stories is a long one. Every town and Moms Demand Action have given me an outlet to turn my pain into purpose and to honor my brother's memory with action. The school massacres, unfortunately, have not stopped. Across our country, mass shootings and daily gun deaths that don't make the news continue. Young children accidentally kill their siblings, friends, or parents due to safety lapses. People commit suicides at a much higher rate because of guns. Mass shootings happen in schools, movie theaters, restaurants, clubs, churches, and most recently in a Waffle House. And they will continue to happen unless change is set in motion. The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. Let's stop the insanity. The request today is a simple one. It's not a political issue. It is a health and safety issue for our country and every town, including Chatham. The national outcry for change has never been stronger. The color orange symbolizes the value of human life. Who can argue with this life-affirming initiative? Who can argue against working together for common sense measures to keep our society, especially the lives of our children, safe? We rely on your compassion and authority to support this initiative. Thank you for considering this request. It means more than you know.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie, and I'm sorry to hear of your loss.
That's tough to follow. My name is Lefty Grimes. I'm from East Hanover. The last time I was here, Robert Nevin called me out by name, but he had nothing to say. So maybe this week I'll have a coherent sentence to put together. Why are we here? No, why are we here on this planet Earth? Why are we here? We're here for 80 years on this planet. Out of the whole span of existence, we're here for 80 years, a little speck of time. Is that time insignificant or extremely significant? Ask yourself that when you hurt people. When you're helpful or you're hurtful. You have to decide that for yourself. Are you a giver or are you a taker in life? Last time I was here, I was disgusted by what I saw. How you banned the medicine for sick and dying of New Jersey. I work with autistic kids too. I heard that you did that too. Well, the autistic kids that I work with hit themselves in the head really hard till they're bleeding, till they're black and blue. They're on Keppra, they're on Onfi, they're on Depakote. Their parents are trying to wean them off those drugs by using cannabis. I don't know if you know that. Maybe they're afraid to tell you because you'll snitch them out. I don't know. But these parents that you see are using cannabis. You don't maybe not know it. I work with a lot of autistic kids. I work with disabled war vets. Disabled war vets are suffering in this town too. How dare you take away the medicine for disabled war vets? You know, back in the 70s, they used to spit on disabled war vets when they came home from the service. They would rather you spit on them than for you to take their medicine away. Why don't you go to Afghanistan and get your legs blown off for us, and then come back and have your medicine taken away and see how you feel? Or go and get PTSD, and then come back and have your medicine taken away and see how you feel. These people are suffering in New Jersey, and it's disgusting what I have seen. I went to Union City the other day. Union City banned cannabis. And I went there and I called Mayor Stack out. I said, listen, you got no wheelchair access in your town, and you're hurting people, you're hurting children, you're hurting cancer patients. He stopped me. He stopped my speech right there. He says, Mr. Grimes, both of my parents were in wheelchairs. Both of my parents died from cancer. We're going to fix this ordinance. We're going to take this ordinance back and allow medical cannabis in Union City. We're very sorry. We support the troops. We support kids with cancer. We support kids with autism. We support the sick and the dying. Unlike this town. And you don't have to answer to me. You don't have to answer to your constituents either. You have to answer to God for what you've done to the sick and the dying of this town.
Thank you, Lefty.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes. Hi, I'm Rose McGill, Lawrenceville, New Jersey. And as well, I'm here to talk about the council meeting last time. At your last council meeting, one of your residents said she had no clue about the medicinal benefits of cannabis after she railed against it. So here is a clue. Do a Google search about the medical and health benefits of cannabis, and you will be inundated with scientific evidence and first-person experiences about its life-saving and health-supporting value. In fact, the only way to really learn about it is to go out of your way to teach yourself, because the government, in coordination with the big money business, is still doing all they can to this very day to suppress the information. Cannabis can be used to treat as many as 700 conditions. It supports good health and places your body into homeostasis and equilibrium. Because it has been banned, we still have much to learn about its full potential, how to prescribe it properly, and dosage recommendations. If you really cared about the health and safety of your residents, you would ban alcohol, which in excess rots your body from the inside out, ruins lives, kills brain cells, and is proven to be highly addictive. If you really cared about the health and safety of your residents, you would ban sugar, which kills more people every year than cannabis ever will. But sugar helps sell dermatology medications, so that will never happen. By banning cannabis, you are reinforcing stigmas, lies, condescension, and trying to make people feel guilty about choosing a natural medicine. But really, those who do not understand its value are the ones being fooled. If town councils are worried about people smoking cannabis, I do not see why you would ban its use in the form of an oil, as it was originally used and intended. Cannabis should be respected for the powerful medicine that it is. People in this town appear to be offended by a cannabis counterculture, but it was prohibition and banning it which created this. Banning it forces people and children to learn about it on the street. The proof that banning cannabis is the biggest scam of all time is the fact that they banned hemp along with it and made it a Schedule I drug. Schedule I meaning it was placed as more dangerous than cocaine and meth. Hemp was the largest crop in the world and was used for everything from food to clothing to building material, but it looks just like cannabis, so they rolled it into the scam. Hemp has hundreds of uses and does not get you high, so why did they ban it? Because it cut into the profits of the well-connected. After the ban in 1937, the last crop of hemp was planted in Wisconsin in 1957. So for 60 years, they tried to erase its history and value. It was not until 2014 that it was included in the Agricultural Act to give states the right to grow hemp again. As of 2017, only 17 states have allowed for it, and it is still illegal to grow it commercially on the federal level. But we are all legally allowed to buy it. Most of it is still imported. So the lies remain in place, clear as day, and history will not forget. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi.
How you doing?
My name is Nancy Bloom. I live at 40 Thornley Drive in Chatham, and I am a constituent, and I wanted to express my support for decriminalization and legalization of marijuana. I also would want you to know that I support the expungement of penalties that have been given to those that have been arrested for owning small quantities of marijuana because I feel that it discriminates against people of color. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I also support everything they said.
Anyone else? All right, we'll close the hearing of citizens. We'll move on now to the final adoption of two ordinances. The first ordinance is ordinance 2018-10, listed as multi-purpose bond ordinance. Tom, you want to recap that real quick? No? Anyone have any questions on this? This is our capital budget, basically. Bond ordinance authorized the making of various public improvements and the acquisition of new, additional, or replacement equipment and machinery and new automotive vehicles, including original apparatus and equipment in, by, and for the Township of Chatham and the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $835,000 to pay for the cost thereof, to make a down payment, to authorize the issuance of bonds, to finance such appropriations, provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds. Anyone on the committee have anything questions? No. All right, we'll open a hearing of citizens. If anyone want to come forward to discuss this? Close out the hearing of citizens. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Mr. Solin?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. The next ordinance up for final adoption is ordinance 2018-11, an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, repealing and replacing Chapter 22 titled Protection of Trees of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Chatham and replacing it with a new Chapter 22, Tree Management. Any discussion among the committee?
No, I think, Mr. Mayor, I made some comments at the last meeting on the introduction. You know, no ordinance is ever going to satisfy everyone 100%. I think Dot hit it on the head at our planning board meeting when she said it makes great strides and incremental, and again tonight. I do think we set out in this ordinance to accomplish the efforts against essentially what was deemed to be or looked like clear cutting, and sometimes it was and sometimes it wasn't, but it was based on the density of the trees on the lots. So I think we've addressed that. We've addressed the streetscape. We've addressed an appeals process. We've addressed registering people who are in the tree management business with the town, making sure they have read our ordinance. So we've balanced it all out. We've balanced the density. And I think one of the highlights of this ordinance is the pre-application lot plan that John had talked about at the last meeting that makes the, before dramatic action, before a tear down takes place, that the overall lot is assessed, looked at, and managed on a variety of fronts, which are spelled out in the ordinance. So I think we've covered the big things that I think we've wanted to cover. We've tried to make it in line in the sense that residents are not overly burdened, but yet we've addressed some of the issues that happen when someone comes in, a builder comes in for redevelopment and a tear down. So I think we've hit a lot of the high points, and I think it's a pretty good ordinance. So.
Great.
Mayor, I'd just like to add my compliments to the planning board for crafting it. I think it's a great step forward, and it's a very positive thing. There was one suggestion that was made, I think, at the time that it was introduced, came from the audience, and that we somehow track the number of trees that are removed, how many of these permits are granted. And I don't know whether the right way to do that is to amend this ordinance to just include it at the end of the year, have a request that our building department add this as a report, or just administratively. The building department already gives us a report on permits and money, but could they break out this specific permit, the permits issued for tree removal, and just so we could kind of keep an eye on it, and recognizing that it may not even be accurate to the individual tree, but at least give us a measure of what's happening in the township.
I started actually to write a plan. I'm not sure if it went out, because I checked my messages. I know Mr. Bosralian's here tonight. Did you get my reply? Did I? No. So I wrote out a whole message, and somehow it never went out. So that was a good waste of 10 minutes today.
Usually you hit the send button too soon.
But I think and I know we've had this discussion before, I struggle with that issue in the sense that I'm not sure what we get out of it. We'll never really know how many trees are being planted. I'm a big data guy. I like data. I like to look at data. And it does give us a reflection of what's going on. I think, but the flip side of that is also from an ordinance, and Albert maybe could weigh in a little bit, but not that it's necessary, but when you put things in ordinance, you expose yourself to things that you may not be doing. And one of the things we did in this ordinance was try to improve, refine, and remove things that were in there that we weren't really accomplishing or doing, and try to make it better. So I'm always, I'm cautious of putting things in the ordinance, and then you expose yourself to whether it be an Oprah request or something else. Whereas if we do it from an administrative standpoint, like you pointed out, Mike, you know, that I don't know what the burden is there, but at the end of the day, you know, it's nice to keep track. I think it would be whether a monthly, annual, whether there's, you know, been exceptions granted, whether there've been people have gone to look to the committee to that have been denied. You know, those are probably some of the high points, but you know, I hesitate to put it in the ordinance, but maybe John, you could address that, or Tom.
I would suggest to you that it's not necessary to be in the ordinance. It is something that we can administratively track, and I'm going to throw out the same caution that I did the last time. Just seeing the number of trees removed and the number of trees that were required to be replaced as a result does not give you the full picture of what goes on around town, because not every tree needs to be replaced, and people are constantly landscaping, re-landscaping, replanting, planting trees that they didn't plant because they were obligated to, they just did. So, you know, I suspect that there's a much less of a loss of overall number of trees than people may suspect. Certainly, mature trees that, you know, that came down and are replaced with a 4-inch caliper tree, there's a difference there. And that's, I guess, the balancing act that you need to figure out, is how many replacements for that. But quite frequently, we have people applying to take down a single tree on a lot that is far in excess of the requirement as far as the tree density goes. So they're not required to plant one, but you know what? They're doing it anyway. So, or, you know, but we're not tracking that because it's not going to be indicated on the permit, because they're not required to. I just know from experience and from driving around that people frequently plant trees even though they don't have to. But I'll be glad to figure out a way to administratively track the number of permits issued and the number of trees that permitted and the number of replacements that were required, as long as everybody understands that that is only a portion of what goes on out there.
Thanks, Tom.
Well, I think we would be remiss if we think we got to go register every tree we plant, because, right? I mean, that would be preposterous. So,
well,
as Tom said, people are planting trees all over the place all the time.
They are, and anecdotally, I can recall Mr. Brower sitting up here probably 10 or 15 years ago, pointing out to people that Rolling Hill used to be a dairy farm, that almost all the trees through there were planted by man, by Chatham Township residents. It's not a, you know, it's not a virgin forest there.
Well, we just heard Dot from the Environmental Commission report that they're going to be giving away up to 1,000 seedlings this coming Saturday. So, I mean, it's your point's well taken. On the other hand, the permits are being issued for trees with a 12-inch diameter, and what we're planting is significantly less, whether it's a seedling or one of the sizes that's required in this ordinance. But I think it's a helpful piece of information.
Agreed, but again, and I don't mean to belabor the point here, but not every 12-inch tree is particularly special either. You know, the original ordinance that was in place some, 18 or 20 years ago identified specimen trees, and it sought to protect specimen trees and things that were special. And Abbey Fair, who was probably, seen as our biggest tree hugger in town, used to scoff at the idea of saving some of these pine trees. And it was like, I don't recall the exact terminology she used, but she did not see those as worthy of protection. It was about protecting mature oaks and holly trees that could be 100 years old but are not 18 inches in diameter. But there was a different focus at that time, and there was no sense that every tree is sacred. And I hope we don't get to the point where that's what we all think.
Anyone else?
Public?
Well, thank you very much. I just want to commend Kevin again for your efforts in leading this this charge. We
still need to do public hearing.
Yeah, I'm going to pontificate for a little bit. So commend you again. Commend you again, Kevin, for your efforts again in leading in this. We had residents came before us and requested something be done. As often is the case, when residents come to us with suggestions and ideas, we listen, we evaluate it, we react, and in this case, we're able to come with an ordinance that I think is going to benefit the entire community. So thank you very much for that. At this time, we'll open up for hearing of citizens.
Hello again. Todd Goodman, 4 Woodlawn Drive. The idea that this ordinance has anything to do with an individual planting a seedling is disingenuous at best and silly at worst. This has to do with builders, okay, who are clear-cutting lots. Nobody cares about somebody planting an individual tree in their backyard. Nobody's asking for a permit for that. None of us have ever suggested that every tree is sacred, although regardless of what the kind of tree it is, it's special if it's blocking the kind of homes that your rules allow to be built. Okay? So when we have these hideous McMansions going up on our street and they're removing trees for no reason, not because it's required for the building, not because of any other reason, there's no danger to the property of the home, they're perfectly healthy 80-year-old trees that are much greater than 12 inches in circumference, and you can just look at the plans if you don't believe me. Those trees provide screenage for those of us who don't want to look at the horrendous homes that are being allowed to be built. So the idea that they're special or that we're tree huggers, that whole implication is disingenuous and ridiculous, and I just have to laugh at it. What I was going to say before all that was thank you to all of you guys and everyone on the planning board and everyone who's been involved in this for all the hard work. I know it's a lot of work. I know it's a drag. We sat through those planning board meetings and we greatly appreciate the ordinance. It's very good. We have a couple of concerns which I'd just like to bring to your attention tonight. First is we're a little unclear as to whether or not this zoning officer, who appears to have all the juice at the beginning of the process, the zoning officer is the person who looks at it, the zoning officer is the person who goes out. It says may, it should say must go out. We believe all of these, when there's a situation where it's a tear down and a builder involved, there has to be an eyeballed survey. Part of the problem with the old ordinance was you could just look at a blueprint that had a couple circles on it. We're going to take this tree out, and there was no way to determine whether that would have any effect on the greater scenic impact of that neighborhood. So we think it has to, that anytime there's a builder, if it's an individual, and maybe you can't separate this, I don't know if you can, but if there's a builder that's suggesting that they need to take down every tree on the lot, and obviously this will hopefully be preempted by a lot of what's in the ordinance, that whoever this zoning officer is has to be independent. And we believe there ought to be more than one. It really should be 3 people who go out and determine this at the beginning, because one person we know can be corrupted very easily and may have ulterior motives. So if it's 3 people, it makes it a little bit more democratic, if you will, and transparent as to whether or not someone physically went and looked at the site and said, all right, well, here's what the builder is proposing, and we've gone out and looked at it, and we've realized that these 2 trees have to be removed in order to build the home. These 2 don't need to be removed, so we're going to try to save them. So we'd like a little bit more on the front end as it regards a mandatory site survey. It shouldn't be just left up to the zoning officer. Well, maybe I'll go out and look at it, or maybe I won't. Because again, the paperwork doesn't tell the story. Secondly, there's no public notice that we see in here at all that I can tell. I don't know whether it's legally not okay to issue a public notice when somebody has submitted an application for tree removal, but it seems to me it should be at least the same as when they have to notify neighbors within 200 feet. If there's any way to insert that into there, so that those of us, again, you've all been now down to Woodlawn Drive and seen the situation. So if there's any way to just let the neighbors know that East Park Builders is about to desecrate yet another lot, and before they do, they're going to have to submit a tree removal plan, then we would say, okay, great. Well, then we'll try to be around when that happens. When is that happening? Who's coming out? And we'd like to be there too, because it would be great to have some notice ahead of time so that we can see whether or not what used to go on is still going on, or whether in fact there's actual enforcement and an ability to apply what the ordinance says. Because the ordinance, for all the work and all the diligence that went into it, is a bunch of words. We had all that before, and it wasn't enforced. So the enforcement mechanism is key. And that leads me to 2 other things. If there's any movement on the size of the replacement tree, if we could make those a little bit bigger, we think that would deter the builder from taking down the big tree in the first place. I don't know if there's any room to do that.
Do you have a suggested width, size?
As big as we can make it, Kurt, because if you take down an 80-year-old, sorry, Mr. Mayor, if you take down an 80-year-old tree and replace it with a 2-inch sapling, that's silly, okay? So it doesn't really matter where you put that sapling, because it's never going to become a tree while we're all walking the earth. So we'd like to see a bigger tree required, not because we think they'll plant replacement trees, we think it'll stop them from taking down the trees that they don't need to take down. And then, I'm sorry, I know I'm over my time. The $2,000 fine, we know that's a statute, we can't go beyond that. Is there any way, and I don't know if Mr. Cruz can answer this, but to put in a provision whereby if a builder, let's take East Park for example, and I don't know how they're notified of this new ordinance because they're going to claim ignorance. They're going to take down every tree and go, oops, we didn't know about the new ordinance, sorry, fine us and we'll pay the fine. Is there any way to put a provision in that if a builder does that, claims ignorance of the law, or violates the tree ordinance in any way, that we suspend that builder for 2 years from the time they finish the project they're on? So it's not, in other words, we don't want the fine to start now. These guys have been on our street for 5.5 years, they're never leaving. And so we need to tell them, okay, you violated the tree ordinance, your punishment is, as soon as you finish the home you're currently working on, you're out of Chatham for 2 years. That would stop this in its tracks. One line would stop all this from happening, because no builder is going to pass up the cash that they are making by shelling out $400,000 for an old crappy house and building a house and selling it for $1.7 million while destroying the neighborhood. But that would stop them. If they knew they couldn't come in here and milk the cow again and again and again if they violate this ordinance, that would compensate for a weak $2,000 fine that isn't going to stop any of them from doing it.
Thank you, Tad.
And last but not least, if this all passes tonight, when does it go into effect? When is the licensed tree expert hired? When is the zoning board chosen? Because these guys are about to start all over again right across the street from me. So we're wondering, when does this actually take effect, and when can we expect that to happen so that we might be able to have an experiment to see if it works on our street?
I'll defer to Albert to answer some of your questions.
I believe the ordinance becomes effective upon publication, correct?
Which will be 7 days from now, assuming it passes tonight.
So the ordinance becomes effective a week from tonight.
As it relates to some of his other comments,
Or, I'm sorry, not a week from tonight, 2 weeks from tonight, because it is published in the next Thursday's newspaper, and then a week after that. In terms of all the comments that were made, they're all substantive comments. And if you wanted to entertain any of them, you'd have to, in essence, start again. You'd have to introduce an amended ordinance with whatever items you wanted to address. And you'd start the process again. With respect to notice, earlier in this evening, mention was made of the municipal land use law, and this particular ordinance does not fall under the municipal land use law. But the only notice provisions are those related to land development applications required by the municipal land use law. When you go to apply for a building permit, you don't have to give notice to any of your neighbors, or a demolition permit. Very often those do not require notice. With respect to the fines, municipalities can only impose those fines that are authorized by law. This ordinance authorizes the maximum amount of fines permitted by law. The concept of barring a contractor for 2 years is another type of fine, and that's not permitted by law. So I think those are some of the issues, but certainly the effectiveness, the effective date is 2 weeks from tonight when it's published in the newspaper. And if you want to entertain any of those comments or any of the additional comments, you'd either have to start the process again or perhaps refer it to the planning board and have them look at it. One last item, the reason the zoning officer is designated as the person to enforce this, and mind you, there is a zoning officer and then there are 2 deputy zoning officers, the engineer and the administrator. So we actually have 3 people that will look at this. In terms of authorizing citizens to be another set of reviewing, this type of ordinance is an ordinance that is exercising the police power of the municipality. My opinion would be is that you cannot delegate that authority to someone that is not a municipal employee, because it is an exercise of that police power. And so many of the things that were being said and discussed all point to the fact that it's a police regulation. It's not a police department regulation, but it's utilizing your police power. So I don't think it would be appropriate to have anyone other than the zoning officer, who is someone who is familiar with the town ordinances, is familiar with building practices, and is part of the town. So those are my general comments. I don't know if I've
That's
answered
helpful.
all your questions.
I want to be clear. So when you say the law doesn't allow it, you mean state law?
Yes,
Okay.
in Title 40A, if you look under the home, there is a...
I believe you. I just wanted to clarify with state law versus municipal.
Correct.
Okay.
The municipality is a creature of the state. And by that is meant that if the state doesn't give the municipality a power, it doesn't have it. So the legislature has said municipalities must have the same penalties and fines for ordinances, whether it's down in Cape May County or in Bergen County. So there has to be a uniformity, so if you violate an ordinance, you're treated fairly consistent.
And forgive my ignorance, but I was under the impression that amendments or changes, small ones anyway, could be made by voice vote at this meeting. Is that not correct?
No.
Okay.
I judge whether or not an amendment is substantive or material, and all the amendments that you sent in your red line version, all of them are substantive, and even the ones you mentioned tonight are substantive. So it's a judgment call, and this is not changing a semicolon into a period.
I understand.
They're all fairly substantive or material change.
And last question, as it regards the authority or lack thereof that a citizen might have, the ordinance calls for a citizen to sit on the appeals panel.
Different.
That's different.
Yes, what you're talking about, as I understood your red line, is having people go with the zoning officer or independently of the zoning officer and look over that person's shoulder, up to 3 citizens.
Can they go as an observer but with no authority?
No, because then they're interfering with the job of the zoning officer.
How?
Do
They
you-
can't participate, they can only observe.
My judgment is not. Yeah, and my advice to the Township Committee would not to have that. That's why you have a paid staff.
We're back where we started.
That's why you have a zoning officer, that's why you have an engineer and an administrator. But you're delegating police powers to someone that is not employed by the municipality.
Thanks, Albert.
And Mayor, just a quick elaboration on the penalty portion of the ordinance. The reference was made tonight that there's a $2,000 fine, but as I recall, it's per tree. So if a person does go rogue, it starts to add up on per trees. And in addition to the fine, the ordinance does give the potential for 90-day jail terms and 90-day community service, so per tree.
Fine
So
trees.
there certainly are other teeth in addition to the $2,000 fine.
And at the end, when a case is brought before the municipal court, it is the municipal court judge that makes the judgment
Correct.
as to what the fine is within the parameters set on the ordinance. So I don't want you to leave the impression that everyone is going to be fined $2,000 for every tree. That may be the case, may not be the case. It depends on the circumstances and what occurs at the hearing or the trial of that case. So that is a range, and the judge can exercise the judge's discretion and authority to impose what that judge believes is the appropriate fine.
Albert, quick question. In terms of fees and fines and whatnot, how does that go about if we want to create a new fine, or
Well,
are we beholden to what the state already has? I'm saying, like, right now, this fine is for tree removal. Could you create a fine that says beautification or something like that, something, and you define it? You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, you have to be specific. Beautification is in the eye of the beholder.
I'm saying,
so,
is it something the municipality could do to supplement we're limited by $2,000 here. Could we create another fine that would kind of go after what we're trying to accomplish to make it a stronger deterrent?
So you could really throw the book at it, like figuratively, because you could say, we're fining you for all of these 10 things.
There is a New Jersey Supreme Court Supreme Court case out of Jackson Township that sets the boundaries of what a tree protection or tree maintenance ordinance can have. This is an issue that has gone before the New Jersey Supreme Court, and they've explained what can and cannot be within the ordinance. I know that when the planning board was reviewing this, I spoke with the planning board attorney specifically about this case, and he reviewed this case also. So you've gotten the benefit of the planning board attorney reviewing that case and reviewing the applicable case law. I don't have the name of the case in front of me, but if you Google Jackson Township and tree ordinance, you can see the case and find it. So the municipality is limited in what it can do.
Right, and I would just add to that I believe the fine was in place in the old ordinance, was it not?
Not up to the maximum extent.
Not up to the maximum, but has anyone ever been fined? Not to my knowledge.
Yes.
Okay, well, we have not seen that, and if these guys, East Park, have not been fined for the trees they took down, then it has no teeth, none.
But there's specific changes, Todd, and we've addressed some of your concerns.
You have, and I appreciate that.
And what we did not have,
But if it's not enforced-
what we did not have previously, though, was the streetscaping, which is what you're alluding to. And that wasn't in the old order. That's why we redid this. And we did make the appeals process where there is a citizen. So if there is if we are getting challenged, at least a third independent party, so to speak, a citizen of town, sits on that and can make the determination whether to uphold it or not. And I think that was a recommendation that you had talked about. The last thing I'll drive to is just the demolition permit, right? So if the demolition permit, John, maybe you can talk a little bit about it. The demolition permit process, if there's a demolition, and obviously if they're going to demolish the house and rebuild and they need a variance, then there would be a notice that would go out. I don't know the actual time frame of the process of that, from demolition permit to what are you doing with the property and when the notice would go out. But a lot of, we're hopeful that a lot of what goes into it is in that pre-application permit, which we did not have before. And the flip side of that, and maybe it drives to your last point about stricter penalties, is the registering of the businesses that will be engaged in taking down the trees. And in that sense, from a builder's perspective, if they have to register, they have to read the ordinance, they have to understand the ordinance, testify that they have, and if they do not, I don't know where that flows in. Is that a builder's or is that tree management? They're going to be put out of business, and the last thing they want to do is be put out of business.
Why, a $2,000 fine per tree?
No,
on a
not
house
the
for $1.5 million?
We're not talking about the builder. John, do you want to address that?
These were preemptive measures that go in advance of any of the site management, the lot grading, et cetera, right?
Yes, one of the, first and foremost, one of the first thing that we did when we were looking at this ordinance is that I actually pulled 6 lot grading applications where we received numerous complaints. And so we use that as the basis, like how can we improve upon minimizing the complaint, how do we address the complaints and will the ordinance address those sites? So we did look at that. And one of the applications that was a major complaint, it wasn't a builder, it was a resident of Chatham. He bought the land, he was being his own GC, so it was a resident who clear cut this piece of property. And after he got his all his approvals in the lot grading process, he spent a lot of money on engineering, architecture, and so when I get a lot grading plan, there's a lot of money invested in that plan. And in this particular case, during the permitting process, I said, really, can you save this one tree? You could probably change the architecture a little bit to make it work. And he just says, listen, I just can't. I can't go back to my architect. It was too much in this. And so there was a tree and he kind of recognized, like, yeah, he didn't think of it until I mentioned, like, hey, that's a beautiful tree. You really should try to save it. And he says, you know what? If I knew that from the very beginning, I probably would have taken that into more consideration, but I can't at this point in time. He had his tree density, so it wasn't like I had a lot of teeth to say, you can't take down this tree. But with that example, that's why I recommended this pre-application process. Basically, before you get a demolition permit to demo the house, we get it's not a full lot grading plan, it's just a concept plan. This is basically where I'm going to be putting the house. This is the location of the driveway. This is where the dry wells may go, just so that we have an opportunity before a lot of money is invested into that piece of property. We say, you need to save that tree and you need to work around it. And so we give that opportunity to do this. It also, it's not just developers. I've had situations where Inc. gave a lot grading waiver because it was just an addition on a home, and all of a sudden it goes far beyond what what was represented, and trees do get removed. And so, as part of this process, it's not just the house demolitions. Every demolition permit that's issued applies for a tree permit, or they sign a certification that no trees are going down. So we're just even alerting people that if you're putting an addition on your house, you have to sign the certification. If you're not taking down any trees, sign it as part of the lot grading waiver, as part of if you're not needing it. So we are hopeful that this will at least start the discussion in the very beginning of the process, not just for the developers, but also for homeowners that want to put in that pool, that want to put in that large patio, that we just point out some of the obvious sometimes of a very specimen tree that just try to make an effort to try to save that.
Thank you, John. Any other questions, comments?
I just may add one thing, Mr. Mayor. We're focusing on a penalty for a tree removal, but the ordinance is very clear. Section 22-11 says that any person who shall violate any provision of this chapter, or who shall fail to comply with any order issued pursuant to this chapter, or who shall violate any terms and conditions of any tree removal permit are subject to a violation. So it's if the application is not submitted, that's a requirement under the ordinance, that's a violation. If the tree permit has certain conditions and those are violated, those are also subject to summons. So it's not just at the end, it's a requirement of all the compliance with all the requirements of the ordinance that can result in a summons being issued. And the specifically again in chapter 22-11, it refers to the statutory authorization for this, which is NJSA 40:49-5. And if you read that section, it pretty much is mirrored here.
Great. Thanks, Albert.
Well, I'll just say one last thing, and I'll be quiet, I promise. In no way do I want you to go back and start over, okay? So that's just me personally speaking. I can't speak for anyone else in town. Let's pass the thing, because we're going to have a little trial at 3 Woodlawn pretty soon, and we're going to see if it works. So it'll be tried in actuality. We'll see if it works. One last question. In the case of a builder, let's just say hypothetically East Park Builders, that's been on one street for 5.5 years, how are they going to know about this new ordinance?
You're going to tell them.
I'm going to tell them?
I assume so, but they're going to
Okay,
know.
but there's nothing that goes out to builders, there's no notification.
When they apply
So if they
for-
say, well, we never heard about it because Todd didn't tell us.
How does anybody find out anything, Todd?
What do you
We
mean? There's
publish
public
things that
notice,
get-
Tom.
That's correct. We post it, we advertise it, we publish it in the newspaper. When they come in to get new building permits, it'll be part of the package to do the
That's all I
tree.
wanted to know.
So that's the way that it's always worked.
Basically, Greg's not going to issue a demo
But,
permit.
I'd like to just clear up one thing, and I don't want to pick a fight with you, Todd. You and I have had the discussion. But I don't want the record to appear as though there have been wholesale violations of the existing ordinance that was not enforced, because that is simply not the case.
Well, they took
People
down
that-
trees that were over the regulated size, and nobody
They
did anything
didn't do it
about it.
without a permit. They
Right.
had permits, they had approved lot grading plans. There have been people that have violated their approvals on lot grading plans. I'm not sure how many involved taking down trees that weren't permitted, but in terms of individual tree permits, there have been very few violations. And one of the reasons is that the whole concept changed to regulating density on the lot as opposed to regulating every tree. You know that, I know that. So this idea that builders or homeowners or anybody are taking down trees because it's cheaper to pay a fine than it is to comply is just a false narrative. That has not been happening. And it is expensive to remove a big tree. If you've ever had to do it, it costs several $1,000s to remove one.
It's not that much, but I have had to do it. And that just, you're making my point for me, that without somebody going out and eyeballing what they're doing, the reason they were given those permits was because somebody saw a little circle on a blueprint and said, sure, take it down, who cares? Nobody actually went out and looked at what the impact of that would be. So I'm thrilled that that is now in the, is that a Bruins mug? Congratulations. In no way am I suggesting that the ordinance is not effective in that regard. I think it is. I think there's a lot of stuff that has to happen ahead of time that should stop the builder from doing this, and that's what we hope happens. But as to Kevin's point, it's not perfect, and there are a lot of holes in there. And if a builder decides, to hell with it, I'll pay the fine, then there's nothing really.
And that's the point I want to
do.
make. I have not seen evidence of builders having that kind of an attitude. They're businessmen
around.
and women, and I don't think that that's what happens.
We'll see what happens.
And
Thanks,
the other, and the last point that I promise I'll shut up, you promised, I'm going to promise with you. A lot of what you and I have disagreed about is subjective. It's a question of, you think those are monstrous houses, but somebody's buying them. The person buying it doesn't think it's a monstrous house. You do, because you live in a modest house and you would like it to, your neighborhood to stay that way.
Your advocacy on behalf of the builders is not just remarkable, but it's curious given that you don't set policy. But you come out in favor of the builders at every meeting,
I'm not
every
no,
discussion, all you lean towards them, and that's fine, Tom, but it's curious given that you're not sitting up there.
I defend the rules that are in place.
Right.
And that's
Right.
what's going on in this town. You may not like it, but it's permitted.
Right. Right.
Thank you. Joe?
Joe Bessarelli, Fairfax Terrace. Thank you again for this very substantive improvement in the tree ordinance that a lot of work and thought went into, and I support it as written. Thank you to the work by the committee, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Chickarone, the attorney, Mr. Rushke, everybody involved. It is a substantive improvement. And when you look at, that's kind of why I brag about Chatham Township. You were presented with concerns 4 or 5 months ago, all kinds of concerns, people from all different sides, and you balanced that with the need. And then 4 months later, we're back here with a much improved ordinance that absolutely, that I think is definitely better. So thank you, and we should be proud of it. That's why I brag to my friends in my hometown of Franklin Lakes, and my friends who live in Hohokus and Ridgewood and Madison and Chester. Wherever we have friends, we brag about our town because we're proud of it. So thank you. And after hearing Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Chickarone, I trust we don't need to put into the ordinance keeping track of how many trees were removed and how many trees were added. I think it's great to add it to the administrative report. If that was the administration's offer, I think we'd take it. But 2 weeks ago we were here, and the chair of the zoning board gave a list of all the different variances and setbacks and different things that were passed. Why not just throw in, here's the number of tree permits that were in your report, that tree permits that were granted, here are the number of replacement trees, and here are the number of new parcels, properties that were allowed to go below their minimum density. No prejudice. I don't know what the right number of trees is in the township. I think we have a healthy number now. I don't know what the right number of trees is on a single property.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Nobody's allowed to go below the density that's required. Again, that's a misconception. You're not allowed. If you don't have the density, you can't take the trees down, or you have to plant replacement trees that bring you up to the required density.
You are in the new ordinance. You are allowed. I'm not even arguing that you shouldn't. You should be allowed to go below the density if there's a need and the ordinance outlines what the needs are to put you below the minimum density. All we're saying is, we don't know so no prejudice. If the administration can just keep track of it as we go along, instead of at the end of the year, you can't have a 6-hour project dumping on you in December. If you keep track of it as we go along, how many trees were permitted to remove, how many trees replaced, and how many properties were allowed to go below the minimum density. It's just numbers, it's just data. It doesn't tell the story, but it just gives, over a course of 10 years, it gives whoever's sitting in those seats information, citizens information. So, like I said, I support the ordinance as written, administrative reporting. I mean, we all know when you have to catch up at the end, it's a pain. But if you keep track of it, knowing it's going to report on it, it's easy because the data's already there. So thank you for this work. I continue to brag about what this committee and administrators are doing in our town. Thank you all.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Anyone else? All right, a motion to close out the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Selin?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Do you want to vote on this?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Moving on now to the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions on this before Greg reads them off?
This evening we have Resolution 2018-085, receipt of reports, 2018-86, approving meeting minutes, 2018-87, certifying review of audit, 2018-88, corrective action plan, 2018-89, refunding overpayment of taxes, 2018-90, authorizing change order for contract with Tilcon, 2018-91, salary resolution, 2018-92, amending budget, Long Hill Neighborhood Resurfacing Grant, 2018-93, amending and supplementing tree debris removal contract.
Thank you, Greg. I think we had a question on, we have got two versions of Resolution 2018-91. There's an A and a B.
No, I think the first one.
The first one, so A. B. B?
All the above?
I was told this,
Do we have a C?
that's the one that's on.
All right. 91B is what we're looking at.
B. Oh, I'm like,
Any comments on the consent agenda? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Selin?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes?
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Moving on now to discussion items, possible ordinance or resolution. Anybody have any topics? I'll just bring one up. Someone emailed us about the floor area ratio, and if we could take a look at that. I don't know if the planning board is thinking about that or has thought about that, or what we can do to recommend that they take a look at it again.
We've kicked it around just slightly, but
Can we kick it around
we're
a little
reviewing
harder?
we're reviewing other things right now. So yes, we will add it to the list.
Great. Thank you much. Any other topics? All right, close another hearing of citizens. Anyone want to come forward?
Sit down.
Seeing no one come forward, we'll close the hearing of citizens. Executive session, Greg, you want to read those off for us? Assume we have, right?
Resolution 2018-P-05, resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing conference of the Township Committee with the public excluded, whereas NJSA 10:4-12 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of the specified subject matter. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Litigation in the matter of the Township of Chatham for a judgment of compliance of its third round housing element and fair share plan, docket number MRS-L-1659-15. Litigation, Fair Share Housing Center versus Township of Chatham, docket number MRS-L-0000234-18. It is anticipated that the minutes on the subject matter of the executive session will be made public upon conclusion of the matter under discussion, and in any event when appropriate pursuant to NJSA 10:4-7 and 4-13. The committee will come back into regular session and may take further action. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Mr. Selin?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.